All right. And I think we're ready to go. So, my name is Miriam Walden, and I represent ATA here. I'm the political director of ATA. I also teach high school at Albany High. And the idea that ATA has is to introduce our members and the public to the candidates for school board. And so I'm really appreciating that Melissa could make some time for us today. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you for making time for me.
Cool. And so what we're going to do is I have some prepared questions, and we're going to talk kind of informally. And if any of the attendees who are members of our union want to add in a question, throw in a question, you have a couple different options. You can put it in the Q&A section, which you'll notice on the buttons on the bottom of your screen. You can raise your hand, and I will bring you into the meeting with audio. And I think those are your options. Yeah, and if you're just dying to be up here on the panel, you're going to let me know in the chat. And that's another way you can communicate with both me and Melissa can see the chat. So I thought maybe a good place to start would be just tell me about your connection to Albany schools. What are all the ways that you're connected to Albany schools?
Sure. So I'm a parent of two daughters. My oldest is a sixth grader now at the middle school. She started in Albany Public Schools in kindergarten at Marin, and so went through Marin and is now at the middle school. Very excited. Wishes she could physically be at the middle school, but she's excited to virtually be there. And my younger daughter is in third grade at Marin. She started in TK at ACC, and then started kindergarten at Marin, and so continued through. And I'm also an officer in the district's Black Parent Advisory Group, and have been in that role for 2 years. And I, with a couple of other parents, and a lot of involvement with Melissa Poole as well at Marin, started the IDEA Committee 2 years ago, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access at Marin, and have served as an officer in that group for the last 2 years also.
Cool. I wanted to ask you about being in the classroom, but maybe before I talk about what experience you've had being in classrooms, I would just say, like, what would you say is what have you got out of those experiences? Do you want to pick something and tell me more about it? Like, what's it like to be a parent, or what have you gotten out of the committees?
Oh, wow. I mean, what it's like to be a parent, that's just, it's too big.
Yeah.
But one thing that has really stuck out with me about the IDEA Committee at Marin in particular, and this is for the whole time, but especially during these last kind of 6 months, and I lost track of how many months, but when shelter in place began, we used to meet once a month, and we started meeting every other week instead. And it just really gave me an opportunity to focus on and be more knowledgeable about and advocate for the needs of all of the children in the district who have different needs and different ways that they need to be supported than the children that are in my house. And so those the issues of diversity and inclusion are the issues of my life, both as a Black person, as a woman, as someone who kind of studied these things growing up, but there are a lot of other issues that come into play that we advocate for and try to be resources for in the community, some of which are particularly highlighted right now in all sorts of ways. I mean, access to technology and how children learn, and just whether you have one person at home, two people at home, anybody at home, all of that. And so being able to hear from other people and work with other people. We have teachers in the committee, we have our principal in the committee, and all kind of brainstorm and try to figure out ways to support each other and to really think about, well, yes, I'd like my kids to be back in class, but what's more important to me is to make sure that the kids who really need to be there can be back in class, and to understand how that works, to backseat yourself to other members of the community. So that's just been a really wonderful opportunity that I felt kind of lucky to be a part of.
That's really cool. That's great. So I don't know if in all of that you've been able to get into the classrooms very much, but I thought
I have.
You.
I'm excited to share. when my little one was in kindergarten, I used to come into her class once a month to sing with her class. I'm a singer. And so that was a lot of fun, in addition to kind of, chaperoning field trips and that sort of thing. But that was the time that I got to regularly be in the class, and that was the things that I kind of took from that. On one of them is that kind of no matter what my mood was before I went, and kind of what was happening with the other things in the day, and kind of, oh, it turns out this is a difficult day, to kind of stop at noon to go do this thing for 15 minutes or whatever. I just always had such a boost when I was done, and the sort of authenticity and sort of lack of sort of social graces like that just kind of come as you are of children. I really I'm sure it's maybe not always all fun, but I really appreciated that, and it just always kind of brought a lift to my day. And then it was also really informative to see, there are some children who were kind of right at the front and like paying super close attention to the song I was teaching, and really, and then there are other kids who are kind of on the outskirts and are maybe just really excited about sort of moving around in general, but aren't really focusing on that. And, a couple times when I came in when the teacher wasn't there and there was a substitute there, and the sort of energy in that room was completely different. And these are small children, this was kindergarten. And so trying to walk that line of, sort of being somewhat firm and having an activity that you're trying to do, but also sort of honoring the, the energy and the sort of ants in the pants of the children. That was interesting to even be a part of for a small period of time, and gave me, additional respect for the teachers who have to kind of, just sort of harness all that energy all the time.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were talking about just how much of a high it is to work with young people for a few minutes, or even, or for a whole day. It's a fabulous thing. It's what teachers are addicted to, this, this feeling of being with people and of connecting with other minds, and the joy of it. And it's one of the really hard things about remote education. It still happens. There's still a little of that energy, but it's definitely harder to get that going. And so as you were talking, I was
I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say, it's in being in the IDEA committee, one of the teachers who's a member of that committee, when she was talking about the sadness that she was feeling at the beginning of shelter in place, to not be able to connect with her students, it was just really impressed upon me in a way that I hadn't understood before, what that lack felt like for her. And I'm sure for a lot of other teachers, it was just, there's so many difficult things about this period of time, and I feel it as a parent, but it was really wonderful for me to have that sort of, that improved kind of full picture, like of the humanity of all the kind of people involved, and the ways that we're all being negatively impacted right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so I'm wondering, from that experience as a parent, from the experience on the committee, from being in the classroom, from your own education, like, ultimately, what are we doing all this for? And it's not just for the, the joy of being with each other, but what is the purpose of public education? Why are we here? What are we trying to do?
Oh, wow. Public education it's an equalizer. It's access to reach for whatever it is that you as an individual person are trying to achieve. It's when it's working well, it puts us on a level playing field. It supports us. It makes us into a community. Ever since I was young, the importance of education in my family was just extremely important. And, this is clearly true for lots of groups of people, but my family's from the Caribbean, and it's a sort of a typical, this is kind of the hierarchy, parent, child, and this is sort of the role, this is your job as a child, to kind of move through this and to work hard and do the best that you can. And this is the avenue for advancing yourself, for moving forward. And I mean, for my background, it's kind of a very clear, I have a great grandmother who came here from Trinidad and cleaned people's houses, and a grandmother who was a secretary, and my mom graduated from college, and I got to go to law school, and it's just this very clear path where And so the opportunity to strive and to move forward on whatever path that you choose, not having a lot of money, not having a lot of connections, like that, the fact that that's not a requirement, and that you know, hopefully have the opportunity and the access to be able to sort of strive and define yourself as you want to be and move forward. I mean, is, you know, there's nothing else that provides that. It's a necessary right. It's a human right, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've spoken a lot about the individual effects, and then you mentioned briefly that the role that the schools play as a sort of community hub, and I think about that a lot. It's kind of a deep responsibility, actually, that we're an institution that holds the community together. Did you want to say any more about that?
Sure. I mean, and well, so one thing that my mind just kind of went to in a personal way is just that I I feel privileged and am excited at the thought that my children got to start school in this, you know, at kindergarten, and meet these children who they can continue to be friends with and grow with. And it's lovely living in a community like Albany that's so tiny, where, you know, you can't be that far away, assuming that your children live in, that your children's friends live in Albany. You can't possibly be that far away from each other. And so you know, even when I'm just kind of going to get frozen yogurt and you're sitting at that, you know, the kind of little parklet area, and whatever, our principal walks by and a couple of teachers, or even we were at the Black Lives Matter protest. This was months ago, and we brought our children to it also, right in Albany, kind of near the police station. And we saw so many teachers and administrators and members of the community and parents, and it, you know, I felt so supported. My older daughter in particular felt so supported, and it really does, it provides this community that we feel so lucky to be a part of and to contribute to, and to, I don't know, to kind of have each other's backs, like to feel the way that we're all sort of threaded together, and to feel the responsibility of kind of a little bit of what I was saying before, advocate not just for your own personal interests, but for, to really feel like you have the responsibility of that, like of to hold the whole community in your mind as you're making these decisions and saying what your preferences are, to not just be thinking about yourself.
Right, that's very deep. Yeah, it's a big responsibility. Tell me a little bit about your knowledge of unions. What experience do you have with unions?
I would not say that I have much experience with unions. I've never been a member of a union. I've never, you know, sort of been in union negotiations or anything like that. I mean, I think my knowledge of unions, or my thought about unions, is just, and it's funny because we just passed by Labor Day, and you know, it's sort of I appreciate the at least yearly reminders of, oh, do you like a minimum wage? Do you like, you know, like a certain work day? Do you like certain not having children in factories? Do you like, you know, insurance benefits? Do you like whatever? Like, thank a union for those things, you know? And so I appreciate those reminders, because I think it can be easy to take some of that for granted. So I appreciate the advocacy role that unions play in allowing individual people to be able to kind of speak their truth and advocate for themselves to the bigger corporations, so that, you know, we can all have an opportunity to be in situations that are safe, and that allow us to you know, thrive and be healthy and reasonably happy in our professions.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't always been in a union, but I've almost all of my career I've been doing some kind of job that involved helping people. And one of the things that I've noticed about unions in that role is just that the helping professions can be very dangerous. You know, we ask too much of ourselves. Institutions ask too much of us all. There's an infinite amount of help to be given, and not enough resources to do it. And so in the helping professions I've had where I was unionized versus the ones I haven't, I think the union has kept me from being a danger to myself and others, you know, in the sense of setting some limits on what is expected, and also a sense that the worker is the care. And I imagine that in your profession, that's true too, that, that there's a limit to what you can do for your clients without managing your own process and your own needs. And you have to have some way to set boundaries.
I mean, that's absolutely true. And I'm a corporate attorney, and in listening to you talk and hearing you say that, you would kind of give of yourself to a potentially unhealthy sort of space if there weren't boundaries in place. I actually, it's one of the things that I don't love about my profession. I feel like there is a kind of an idea that, well, just, the more you can work, the better kind of thing. And so it's kind of put on me as an individual to kind of set those boundaries for myself. I think though that even though the union is not or unions are not existing in my specific work, just setting the framework in society at large of what is appropriate to expect from people who are working in different roles is helpful for all of us. But I do wish that kind of, hi, you should stop working now. It's been, 12 hours. This is not healthy. I wish that existed more in my line of work.
Yeah. All right. And it's just a phenomenon of the age too, isn't it? Right. With the way that everything has come into our homes and taken over our.
Yes. You can be accessible at all times. Lucky us.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wonder what you think about you think about when you think about supporting teachers. And I used to ask candidates, do you support teachers? But everybody supports teachers. But what does it really mean? Like, and it's a tricky question. So it's okay to take a little back and forth. And I wonder what ideas you have about how does a leader in a school board, in that, if you're elected into that capacity, actually support teachers.
Yeah,
And
no.
I'm also not really just thinking of teachers, but the whole team that makes our school.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for acknowledging that that's a difficult question, especially to think of how it's done as a school board member, considering I'm not exactly in that role yet, but I can think about it. And that's a hopefully yet. But I mean, kind of baseline off the bat, compensation that is adequate from a benefits wise, from a salary wise. As hopefully many people say, and I am one of them, there are a few roles in our society that are more important than, nurturing our children, shaping the minds of our children. So healthy, good compensation starting point. And, flexible schedules and all of that stuff, having the ability to have time when you need it and have the flexibility to sort of shape your schedule and your time there in a way, and et cetera, in a way that's healthy for you. I think also, I mean, right now in this particular climate, safety comes to mind, and providing the necessary resources, really listening to teachers and to the various members of the community, like you were saying, the whole team, to ask for what's needed, because I don't think it's possible to, I mean, I would like to think that I'm an empathetic person who is, thinking about and concerning myself with and trying to take myself out of my own head and imagine what others need. But someone who's in the role is clearly much more knowledgeable about what they need than me. So whether that's, in the IDEA committee, when we were talking about, do kids have the right devices and the right access to Wi-Fi and whatever, we also said, okay, well, do our teachers have it? Like, Ms. Poole, do we know if our teachers actually have what they need to be able to provide this? And those are just kind of equipment sort of things, but then there's also the training and the development, the professional development access to kind of hone these really new skills that can be potentially really kind of disconcerting to now have to present this material and present yourself in this way, where you're not necessarily a super technologically inclined person. And so having access to those things, but at the same time, not expecting teachers to, just run themselves ragged because here's all these resources. So now you're supposed to kind of take them all in. Just because you have access to things, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to be, around the clock, turning yourself into this, this kind of heightened super teacher, like beyond what you were previously called on to do. So there's a lot of things. Okay, so listening and providing the resources that are asked for, and in a, you know, that's kind of pandemic sort of stuff, but you know, something else that's important to me is continuing to like evolve and diversify our curriculum and that sort of thing, and you know, being really mindful as far as advancing anti-racism and that sort of thing. And so making those types of resources available to teachers as well, and that sort of professional development, so that people who do want to kind of learn and know more in that way have access to do that. Because something that I've seen is, you know, I think that sort of discussion can start to feel adversarial, where like, you know, parents are potentially saying, we want this thing to be different, and teachers can kind of feel like there's some sort of an accusation or some sort of a, you know, a thought that something wrong is happening there. And these things are, I mean, first of all, it's important how you say things to people with respect and understanding, and ask questions, and don't just kind of tell people what they should be doing, especially when you've never walked in their shoes. But in addition to that, you know, these are not ideas that you just kind of snap your fingers and know. Like these are, you have to have access to resources developed by people who have devoted their careers to studying these things and championing these things. And so if the district is not making these avenues available to teachers, then it's not fair to expect that they're going to, you know, all of a sudden pick up an extra degree in, you know, the history of blah blah blah. Like it's not, you know, and so providing that sort of access. And then also another thing that I would say, and this I think is my last thing, but just advocating for the importance of the administration advocating for teachers and for all of the staff is something that I've seen the importance of firsthand, and I've gotten to see it in action a little bit in you know, the way that our principal at Marin has been very deliberate and mindful about you know, when the idea committee will suggest, well, this would be a lovely thing for teachers to do, like, okay, this is not something that we're going to put kind of in teachers, you know, if this is something that parents want to supplement, they can, like, these are the boundaries, like, this is what I think is appropriate to ask, this is what I don't think is appropriate to ask. And even when we've had teachers in our meetings and seeing parents kind of really excited to kind of, you know, like have a barrage of like all the questions and all the thoughts and all the concerns and all the kind of grievances, and so and seeing that kind of play out and feeling like, oh, now I want to be a shield around that teacher who is also my friend, and I want to make sure that, you know, they don't feel like they're on the firing line right now. And so I think advocating and kind of protecting and defending teachers is also really important, especially right now while passions are so high and there's a lot of kind of talking over each other.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's cool. And I just want to elevate a couple of things that you said that are really, you talked about listening. And I think sometimes people have the idea that the union, when we look at school board candidates or school board members and our relationship with them, that we want them to support something specific, you know, like if you say you want this size of a raise or that, then that's what we're looking for. And it's not been my experience in any of my years of union organizing to talk to people that that's where folks are at. And my colleagues should chime in and ask a question. But it's been my experience that people just want to be listened to in a kind of proactive way, you know, like as in everything that you might think about, teachers have some experience with, some expertise with, some impact that they can anticipate that they can see only because of their position inside of this institution. And so they just want a chance to be able to explain that. And they want someone who doesn't ask it after they've already, you know, made the decision. They want someone who asks first, right? And who constantly thinks, oh, but you know what, how's this going to affect the custodians? And how's that going to, and is thinking proactively about getting that information. And if we get a chance to be in that dialogue, we are confident, you know, that the right ideas will float to the top. But what bothers us is when the dialogue is cut off or when it's not there. So I think that listening is just, you know, sounds really basic, but it's actually huge. The whole story, perhaps, right? And
yeah, no.
Evolution was a word you used, which I really appreciate too.
Say again, I'm sorry.
Evolution was a word that you used, and not in the political sense of, but in the evolving sense of our ideas, that working on that anti-racism and that working on curriculum more broadly is an evolutionary process. You know, a teacher interacts with the students, interacts with the subject, learns more about what's happening in that dynamic, and then alters it, and then they learn more and they alter it again. And so like my own approach to anti-racism is a 13-year body of work in progress, you know, and it gets better. I think it gets better every year. But then there are more challenges, and the more that I've done, the more that I see. So I think that institutionally, we have to get used to that idea of evolution, of encouraging the process and welcoming the process, welcoming that it will do something, and then we'll learn more, and then we'll do another thing, and then we'll learn more from that, and we'll keep going. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, no, if it's okay for me to just add on to that, because I think that that's just so important. And, you know, just to kind of even give an example, I have just within the last kind of year, I think maybe year or two, really heard people referring to enslaved people instead of slaves, you know, and that was not something that was on my radar before. And I am someone who minored in African American studies and, you know, cares very much about these issues. And it's just, when I talk to people and I facilitate discussions, you know, at my work and kind of in my personal life too, about these sort of issues, and people can sort of feel defensive about it. And it's really important for me to share that there is no place that you have now, you know, gotten to where, you know, I call it like maximum woke, you know, like you're there, like you've figured it out. And this is all evolving. And it's why I appreciate so much the people who dedicate their, you know, their professional lives to all these different types of activism and these different types of intellectual pursuits, so that we can have the benefit of what they, you know, spend however many months or years developing and writing the book, and then we get to read the book, and then we get to, you know, kind of incorporate some of that into our learning. So,
well, that's good. That's good. And so speaking of evolutionary processes, and I'll just flag that I would love to take any questions from folks who are listening, but you're also, I understand you're tired and it's the end of the day. But let me know if I'm not asking something you're interested in. This is kind of my last substantive question. So we are in this bizarre state of being somewhere along the trajectory of dealing with the COVID experience. And we can't exactly know where it's going in the future, or put timetables on that, or even have like, I would not ask you for a policy projection about where we're going, because that is just not appropriate. You know, we none of us know exactly what's going to go. So I think it becomes more of a, what should we be thinking about question, you know? So as we're struggling to take the next step and figure out what the next step is and figure out how to get someplace, what are the things that we should be thinking about as an education community? So how are you going to kind of parse that decision, and what things are you looking for? What things are you considering?
Yeah, so clearly a very important question and very timely. I mean, I think, you know, the safety of everyone who's going to be on these school sites has to be of utmost importance. People have to feel comfortable being on campus. Every member of the community who's going to be on campus has to feel comfortable being there in order for them to be there, to be required to be there. And so, you know, whether it's things like testing and contact tracing and having the resources from the district, or how that kind of money flows in, how that works to be able to put those things in place so that people can, and, you know, and the hand washing stations, and, you know, being concerned about ventilation if we're going to be indoors, and all of that is, you know, as much as it would be wonderful to be able to be back on campus, until we have very clear ideas and people feel comfortable and confident in those processes that are put in place, it's not an option. And so that's kind of first and foremost, and then also just something that's been very much on my mind, and I was happy to see the email from Dr. Wells talking about it, because it's just kind of exactly what we've been talking about in the IDEA committee, is just the importance of not equality, but equity, not a one approach fits everybody. So I think that as much as I would love for my individual daughters to be back on campus. They are not those that are in the category of children who have the highest need to be back on campus, in a variety of reasons, both as far as their learning and the ability that they have to be able to learn this way virtually, and to kind of direct their own studies in that way, and have that sort of independence and being able to thrive in that way, and also having two parents in the house, and both of us being able to be here, having jobs that allow that, and so I would very much want to see, again, when safety allows, and when just state, county, all of that stuff aligns, I would very much like to see that if there is some small way to get a particular group of children back on campuses, that people who are in that high needs group really have their needs be elevated, and that we as a community support them in that. I'm trying to think. I mean, I think those are the main things that come to my mind as I think about the steps for doing it, and also, like you were saying about listening, which is just kind of, I don't know, I'm a collaborator and bridge builder sort of person, and as who I am, and so I just find that to be so important. Like it's really, there are certain things that I know and that occur to me, and there are other things that don't, and so I think just having groups of people, or having good school board meeting attendance where members of the community are there and are presenting, or virtually there, and presenting their ideas, so that people can hear what all of the different needs are of the different groups of all the various stakeholders who are in our community, people who are immune compromised, and people who have loved ones who are immune compromised or older, or just all the different things that need to be weighed. And so there's not just like a one approach fits all, but just really trying to kind of hear each other, and do an equitable path forward that really supports individual people in their roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's the listening. Another reason why the listening becomes important is because of what you said earlier about that feeling that we have each other's back. Sometimes I think like there's a portion of our reaction to all of what's happening, which is based on the policy and the procedure and the technique and the strategy, and it's and then there's another part of it, which is that part of safety is just feeling that if other people see you at risk, they will defend you, and so when we push each other too much, or we're sort of fighting with each other over what the how of what it is, then we can actually lose the sense that we have each other's back, and it's that which makes everything else possible, that
Absolutely. And yeah, no, absolutely. And I don't know, it's kind of, and it's a really, really difficult time where everyone is kind of shouldering so much, and all of this is new. And I think in situations like that, sometimes people, we don't always show our best selves when we're in these sort of challenging places. But the listening piece is so important in that time in particular, and being open to learning, and to kind of to owning the fact that you don't know everything, and that your positions can change. And just one quick thing else to say about that, because I so appreciated it, was the kind of synchronous versus asynchronous learning, and kind of parents somewhat bristling some about kind of what the divide is between that, and how that is arrived at. And it was an opportunity for me to learn, which I super appreciated, because my initial inclination was, okay, synchronous learning, that is what I want. Like, I'm used to that. I bring my child to a place, someone is kind of talking to them and engaging with them, and I know what that is, and so I know what they're doing, and I trust that they're kind of moving forward in that way, and that's what school is to me, and so all of that. And then realizing from a teacher that one of the important roles of the asynchronous time is to be able to allow teachers the ability to say, these are the students that I am going to meet with in these kind of, in a smaller group or in an individual group, and these are the people who really need my attention right now, versus other children who are able to kind of read for 30 minutes and then do whatever, and which is exactly in line with so many of the goals that I talked about in the idea committee, and just in committee, and myself personally. But it was just one of those times where, you know, I don't know that it's something I would have come to on my own without, you know, being able to listen to a teacher share that with me. And so it was one of those kind of light bulb, like, ah, it really is so wonderful when we can kind of listen to each other and learn from each other.
That's great. That's really great. Well, we just are so grateful to you for taking on for everyone who decides to run, for everyone who decides to make that, you know, commitment to our community. And I know you have some work to be done still. So I want folks who watch this video to be able to connect with you. So I have one idea, and I'm going to lay that out, and then you can say if you have other ideas. So this is my low tech strategy here. Folks who are watching can go to the ATA website, where we have set up a link to Melissa's website, so that you can go right on through and learn more about her and volunteer for her campaign, make contribution, whatever else might be needed. And you can also find out more about what we're up to there, and then at this Twitter handle, where you'll be getting regular updates from the union about what we're thinking about. So what other things you want to put out there into the world? How can folks help you?
Oh, goodness. I think those are the good ones. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have lovely teachers and parents and members of the community and such who kind of surround me in the good, warm vibes and support my attempt to kind of serve the community on the board. And it always, you know, gives me a smile and makes me, it kind of just props me up. And so I love that. So yes, and I actually, as I'm thinking about it, I don't know that I have like a volunteer sort of clicky on my website. So I'm going to add one of those because, you know, when we're distributing flyers or, you know, putting out signs and that sort of thing, that would be wonderful to have folks to help. I would also just, as I've talked a lot about the importance of listening to people, I love to just be able to talk to people and understand more about the ways in which the district has been serving community members of the community well, the things that could be improved upon. This isn't about ego for me. I'm very much not somebody who wants to suggest that I've got all the things figured out. I really want to learn the ways in which you know, the community can work better. I mean, I'm one of the many who moved to Albany for the schools, you know, like that was and so I feel fortunate to be here. We've had a wonderful, wonderful experience with all of our teachers and in the different school sites that we've been at. But you know, we can always improve and do better. And so even just someone reaching out to just be willing to kind of have coffee and chat about stuff is awesome too.
Cool. Yeah. Yep. And then we always just tell teachers and everyone else that, you know, whether you're eligible to vote or not, we can only ask people to do their civic sacrifice and be on these boards if we're ready to do work for them. And then that work is not just the election, but it's the staying in touch and being available to you to help you do the work. So, and it's luckily something you can do even if you can't vote, you can help. Yeah. Right. Is there something that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you? Something you wanted to say?
Oh boy. I wouldn't say I'm trying to, I think I kind of said that, you know, all the, you know, when I think about just kind of the reasons that I'm doing this and kind of what this is about for me, I think my focus on the issues of IDEA have been clear that that's something that's important to me, and also, you know, I kind of alluded to it before, but just the importance of kind of having a respectful sort of calm, you know, I choose my words carefully. I don't kind of shoot from the hip. I don't know if it's the lawyer in me or it's just kind of the person that I am, but you know, I take seriously the positions that I take and the words that I say, and you know, I think that at times there can be, you know, where passions are high, things can kind of fall out that maybe shouldn't fall out, and you know, I want to be clear that that's not my you know, that's not my manner of kind of doing things and representing myself. And so, you know, when I say in kind of my little statement that that I'm kind of embarking on this because I think I can help, that really is what what this is about for me. So so yeah, I think that kind of does it.
And that's a really, you know, it would be really wonderful if we lived in a time where you could say that the standard is clear and all leaders are always very careful and thoughtful about what they say. But these are not the times we live in. Thank you for being the one who is going to hold the standard and keep the high bar.
I will certainly endeavor to.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn off the recording here. And